Welcome everyone to DBT Office Hours. We have quite a number of people on the call today, a number of people with Australian accents and maybe some New Zealand accents, so that's really fun for me. For those of you who maybe are new to Office Hours or are newer to the DBT community, my name's Claire, I'm the DBT Community Manager. I'm based in Philadelphia. This is my one half of my bedroom slash study slash home gym. But as you can maybe tell, I'm from Sydney. So I'm really excited to be joined by Vincy this evening, morning Sydney time, to share what she's been working on at Canva. Before we get into that, I do just want to explain Office Hours. I think we've got quite a few new faces here today. So what are DBT Office Hours? We've really kept these meetings as a place for like the makers in our community to share something that they're working on. So they happen once a week. We change the timing depending on who's presenting to make it, accessible to them, but also accessible to people across the world. And it's just an opportunity for people who have worked on something cool that are using DBT to share that thing, and hopefully some others can learn and ask questions as well. We always leave a little bit of time right at the end for people to ask any questions about the DBT projects that they're working on. So if any of you are on this call today and you're actually not using DBT yet, but you joined this call today and think it's so great that you want to get started, you can actually, Drew, does this link work yet? I probably should have checked this. I meant to check it. No. If you want to join the DBT community, you can join at slack.getdbt.com. I'm so sorry. I did this earlier today. You can join us at slack.getdbt.com. That's where our community hangs out in our massive Slack, and where you can learn from others a lot, and where we post a lot of the information about Office Hours. If you haven't used DBT yet, we also have a getting started tutorial if you want to get your hands dirty and see how it works and how you might be able to use it at your company. That's all I really wanted to say. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Vincy from Canva.
Hello. I will first share my screen. Does that look good to everyone? I hope. Oh no.
It looks significantly better than my slides do, but I'm going to say that's because you work at Canva.
Yes. So hi everyone, my name is Vincy. So today we're going to go through how we do data egress. So what that means is how we send our nice modeled warehouse data to ad platforms like Google Ads and Facebook Ads. So I kind of have two goals for this session, which is one, I hope that you leave this session understanding exactly how Canva does their marketing egress, and also understand the pros and cons of why we do it the way we do. But first, some business context. So Canva is an online graphic design software. I made this presentation in Canva, as you can see from the screenshot. So if you think it looks quite nice, that is 1% me and 99% Canva. You can also design really nice social media graphics and print business cards and t-shirts too, if that's your thing. We are a SaaS company. We operate on a freemium model, which means our product is free, but we have a subscription for people who would like extra bonus cool features. A bit of context on our data stack. So towards the end of last year, we did a huge overhaul of our data stack. So we migrated to Snowflake. We started using DBT, and we're still finishing off a migration to Looker. And our old data warehouse actually had a built-in feature to send marketing lists to ad platforms. So it was towards the end of the migration where we went, oh, we need to figure out how to send these marketing lists or continue sending these marketing lists with Snowflake. And before I go through exactly what we did, I want to talk about why marketing egress is so important for us. Oh no, you missed 2 slides. Next slide. So I've been working quite closely with several acquisition teams for the last year, and one recurring request was marketing teams really want data in their platforms. And there's 2 main reasons why. So first is we advertise for a subscription product, and we don't want to waste money advertising to people who are already subscribers. So we like to create exclusion lists in our campaigns to exclude our current subscribers. It's also not the nicest experience if you're already a paying customer and you're getting upsells all the time. The second reason is we want to do better ad targeting. So we can upload lists from user behavior And on Facebook ads, we can create lookalike audiences. And this means that we can target users with a higher propensity to convert. You might be wondering, hey, we have marketing pixels that send event data back. Isn't that good enough? And the answer to that is that platforms actually have a bunch of limitations. So for example, Facebook won't deduplicate event data, which means that you can't deduplicate based on, say, a user ID. There's also conversion window timeout, so you can't look back past a certain number of days. So bringing it back to our migration, the first thing we did was, obviously, if you have a problem, you Google it. So this was me, and I Googled Snowflake to Google Ads. And all the results ended up being how to pull in Google Ads data into Snowflake. It was extremely not useful and made me very, very sad. Fortunately, I do sometimes have a brain, and I used it, rare occasion. And we ended up with two options. And the first is probably the more obvious solution. So in this option, you have a script on the server, probably Python. You would use the Snowflake Python connector, query Snowflake from Python, write the results to a CSV, and then send the results to some destinations, or to Google and Facebook. But there are some other things we had to keep in mind here, which are big boy things called GDPR and security. So marketing lists are inherently user data, so it contains things like emails, which is PII, and that naturally means that we have to be quite careful with where that data ends up. The other thing is letting an interface where you can let what could be arbitrary queries be run on without supervision, let alone queries that access PII, is a huge security risk. So that option was vetoed quite quickly. The second option is the one we went for. So we ended up using an S3 bucket as an intermediary and also using dbt. So how that exactly works is like so. The first thing to mention is that none of this would have been possible without Snowflake. So Snowflake has a function to unload SQL results into an S3 bucket. We'll go through what this exactly looks like a little later. The second thing was we had a separate dbt project, and there are a few reasons for this. So one is our main transform project contains our warehouse of like beautiful model data, and all our views are free of PII. So putting it in a separate dbt project meant that all the queries that generate lists wouldn't be exposed to things like dbt docs or other BI tools. And like, we really don't care, or we really don't want this exposed to anyone else, ideally, because we only really want to use it for the egress purposes. So inside this dbt project, we have a post hook to dump it to an S3 bucket with a 30-day deletion policy, so that handles all the GDPR for us. From there, we have a Python script. So at Canva, we've actually built it so that anyone that's like Python illiterate can also use it. So it's actually baked inside a Django application. But this script will pick up data from an S3 bucket and then forward the data to Facebook and Google or a bunch of other destinations. And then theoretically, if all that works, we should have happy marketing teams and get some nice revenue, theoretically. And to summarize all of that, here's an architecture diagram. So we have Snowflake here, and then we run our marketing egress dbt run on a box on a cron. That will dump some lists into S3, which is picked up from our Django Python script, which then also forwards that data to third parties. We do also have a bunch of alerts and notifications to tell us when something fails or if it passes, but it's definitely nice that you can just have an alert that pings marketing teams to tell them, hey, actually this failed a few days in a row, so just be aware of that. So any questions so far? Okay, cool. I'll keep cracking on with what the code actually looks like. So here's the actual magic. So I copied this straight off Snowflake docs, and this is all the SQL you need to copy the results of a table or a query into an S3 bucket, which is nice and handy. And this is what our DBT project YAML file looks like. So here we have that every model that we run inside the extract folder, we will run a post hook on it, and it's macro. What the macro looks like is the initial query on how to dump into S3, and we have just macrofied it. So here we've figured out we've set variables on what the relation name would be. We've set what we want our S3 file path to be, so it contains the table, the date to the hour, and then we've named the file as the model name .csv.gzip. And all of that is pretty much the same thing with a few extra variables. Yes, a few extra parameters thrown in. So, for example, we had to increase the max file size to something really big, otherwise Snowflake will automatically chuck it into several zipped files, which ended up being a little too annoying to work with. So after all of that is done, as long as you have all your models in, then you can do a DBT run, and everything should work. Confetti. Cool. We also had a bunch of challenges. So probably the first two are a little intertwined. So the more challenging thing was enabling less technical analysts to be able to upload their own lists. So at least at Canva, not all analysts are really comfortable with Python, and because all of the egress is baked into that, the natural thing to do you would have to add something to either like a config file or something to be able to add a new list in. Instead, we baked this into a Django application so that you would have an interface and could copy and paste like the list name into it and submit the form, and that would automatically be picked up on the next run. The problem with that was that we also ended up doing a huge overhaul of our Django application at the time, and it ended up being a bit of a blocker. So the other challenge was that maybe like this code should have been completely decoupled, and maybe it should be a Lambda instead, because that would also totally work. The third challenge was APIs really suck. Especially, sorry, Facebook. Facebook's marketing API is just not the nicest thing to use. There's a lot of functionality built into it. And so what I ended up doing was I would be searching for specific functions in their API on GitHub, and copying and pasting bits of code from other people who had done similar things. So there we go. Any questions? That's kind of the end of the main gist. So I'll open it up to the floor or the Zoom.
Cool. So just for questions, I think I think maybe we'll still be manageable with this. Normally we just go with unmute yourself and jump straight in. If it becomes a bit of mayhem, feel free to put it in the chat, and then I'll throw to you. But yeah, if anyone wants to start off with any particular questions, I also have one very quickly. Maybe I'll start us off. What has been let's say that the marketing team's using Facebook ads and Google ads, and they suddenly want to move into Instagram ads, which feels like the thing they would have already done. How hard is that to spin up a new API that you need to connect to? How much, where does that work sort of sit? I'm guessing it's in the Python work to get that S3 data into the API as opposed to the DBT side of things. Yeah,
cool. I have a snippet of some of that Python code actually. There we go. Okay, most of our Python code is we built a bunch of classes called uploaders, and each uploader does different things. So we have a base uploader that handles all the reading from S3, and also, so this is the base uploader that every other uploader is based off. So for example, what you have is, what one of them is a Facebook custom audience uploader. This means that it's going to inherit all the downloading from S3 functions by inheriting from that. And the real thing is that it has this function called upload, which means that, and this part is the part that's set different for every single destination. And we have a bunch of like separate like helper functions there. But essentially what that means is that this is the actual script that runs all our uploading, or the entire like upload run. And so we instantiate every single uploader, and then we check a for loop and be like, hey, upload all the lists. But it means that if we want to create a new destination, all we have to do is we need to implement one of these for the new destination. So you still have to do the hard work of wrangling with Instagram's API, but everything else after that should be quite straightforward.
Cool. That's really cool. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions on this?
Yeah, Vinci, you said that's a Django app, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, so what made you choose Django over all of the other things?
Oh, because one of our internal web apps for data is already built on Django. So we just baked it in.
Dennis, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Sure. Thank you for presenting. I was just kind of curious if you have any automated checks to make sure no one is accidentally exporting some of the PII you're worried about just directly through the macro.
Yeah, so the really cool thing about that is because it's in its own separate DBT project, it's all actually done through GitHub. So we have mandated code, we have mandated PRs. So it'll go through the PR review. I think I get put on most of them, if not all. So someone checks it out.
Thanks.
Hi, question. How, I guess, like customizable / non-technical is the app that you're using to send certain lists to the Facebook or AdWords? Is it just like, do people have to go into it as like an analyst and being familiar with certain tables, and can you kind of query any sort of parameters from there? Or is it very much kind of like higher level, want to send like lists that already exist and that have already been pre-filtered somewhere in a DBT model?
Right, good question. So here's a slide I prepared in advance. So adding a new list is really intended for an analyst because you still need to open a PR to create the model inside DBT, and that's really only something that an analyst can do. So the first thing they should do is they would open a PR to make the new model, and then they would go to the Django interface. So here's what the form actually looks like. They would go into the admin interface, click on some link. They'll pick the drop down to see like, hey, this is going to like Facebook, Google, Instagram, Pinterest, or whatever. Paste in what their like model name was inside DBT, which is also what it saved as in S3. Put in like what the list should be called at the destination, a description, how long that user data should be retained for, save, and then it would be automatically picked up in the next run. Hope that answered your question, by the way.
I was on mute, but I was nodding along. Thank you.
Just another question from me. I don't know, I have lots of questions. I'm very curious. How long has it been since you implemented this? How has it been going? Is your marketing team seeing a difference in the efficacy of their marketing spend? Like, how are you measuring if this is working?
So we implemented this, I believe, in January. So I guess it's been a good 4 months now. The biggest thing is they've stopped asking for things. Stop asking for like kind of the same things over and over again, which is really, really nice.
To me, that a marketing team changes their mind on what they want.
But yeah, we started a new, I guess, behavior-based list in the last couple of weeks, and that's been seeing some really, really good results. So that's good. I think another thing to keep in mind with this, another con that I forgot to mention, is when sometimes like the marketing teams like to try out new platforms and they still want those lists there, but it doesn't make sense to like bake it into like something that's so complex with their API, which takes like at least a couple of days to figure out. So that is like quite a con. You can't like just test things out automatically. That one is still you have to download a CSV and then they upload it for like a few weeks or a month until they figure out, hey, this is a marketing platform we still want to advertise on, build a thing.
Yep. Very cool. There's a question from Joel. Joel, I might get you asked this, but I also think Drew might be able to help answer this one. So Joel, go for it.
Yeah, cool. So thank you, really interesting. Not something we can do yet, but I can dream. And while I dream, you said it was dependent on Snowflake. Do you know if like Redshift would support that sort of thing? Like, does it have an unload function?
I have
That
no
sort of
idea.
Fortunately, we have someone on the call that knows a lot about the internals of Snowflake, Redshift, and BigQuery. Drew Bannon.
Yeah, you could totally run an unload query on Redshift. Snowflake has a bunch of faculties that make this kind of thing really easy and seamless. Vinci, I saw you used a stage in one of your unload queries, but Redshift has analogs for sure.
Cool.
And BigQuery, for any BigQuery callers?
I think you could use the API for that, but I'm not sure, to be honest.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think BigQuery has like built-in connectors to other platforms already.
That is very true. Oh, yeah, that makes sense for like being in for them keeping you in their ecosystem. Drew, would there be a macro by any chance to help with that unload?
I think there is indeed a macro in the Redshift package, which you can find at hub.getdpt.com, and we should make one for Snowflake too.
We should.
I do have a question, Vinci. So do you guys use the data that comes out of your warehouse anywhere else? And is it a similar pattern for getting it there? Or is this like specifically something you built for the marketing platforms?
Sorry, when you say, do we use any data coming out of our warehouse, do you mean specifically from all our marketing egress stuff to the user list? Or...
No, it's more like, so this works well for user lists, but do you use a similar pattern for other platforms? Like if you've got, let's say, a CRM or something like that?
Oh, I see. It's actually something we've been looking into. I think I don't know, Krishna on the call, who's the data engineer at Canva, might actually know more about, or might be more across this. I know like we've been looking into it. I don't know if we've done anything about it because there were also a few limitations. So one limitation that we found out was one thing our marketing team likes sometimes is they want the same list segment but per country. And it means they're running like the same query for like 10 countries. But you need to like create a separate like DBT model for each one of those, which gets quite repetitive and like is not really scalable in some circumstances. Works well for this, but that was like one of the other limitations that we ran into. I think we might be baking that into like a bigger, like a more stable, I don't know, not more stable, like a more traditional pipeline. But if Christian is here, he can jump in and help me out.
Okay. Hey guys. Yeah, so this particular thing was mainly for access to outside parties, like third parties. So I guess, do we use data sharing or egress functionality for anything else? Yeah, so our data science teams have come up with a way of just using Snowflake directly in their code. So they link to it directly using the Snowflake connector. That's another way we get data out. And we kind of like what Drizzly presented last week or the week before, we also have partnerships that we will need to send data to. So the other way we're going to be using is data sharing. So these are pretty much the three ways that we have in mind. So yeah.
Thanks,
Did that answer the question? Or
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thanks.
Hi, John here. Just one question. Do you have any problems with sending data to a platform and then, sometimes that platform would, create a new record or records, in their own system, and then they generate an ID, and that makes the whole process not idempotent because we can only push the data once. If we push like say records from the data warehouse without any identifier on the platform just keeps creating new records of users, over and over again as we push again and again. Like, do you have this problem? And if so, how do you solve that?
Do you have like a specific like example of where that problem might come up?
So we're currently trying to push data from Snowflake to Marketo, right? And so we would have, say, a list of users on our end, and some of these users have a Marketo ID, some of them don't. And for the users that have a Marketo ID, they'll just update in place in Marketo. But for the users in Snowflake that have no Marketo ID, new records or new users will get created in Marketo. So that makes the sync between the data warehouse and Marketo only works once, because we send a list to them to create some records, and then we fail to fetch that ID and write back into the data warehouse. So the next time we push the data, Marketo wouldn't create new users for the same record that we actually pushed in the previous one.
Right.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So we haven't run across into that problem before, mostly because I think these APIs specifically are, I guess, emails, and emails are unique. So on their end, they also like handle duplicates. So they, like Facebook, for example, if we push the same email like 3 days in a row, it'll recognize, hey, it's the same email. I'm going to add it to the list, or I'll keep it in the list, is the thing. But it sounds like it would have been a similar problem than, say, how our egress sort of works. If we create a new list, but we don't keep like what the list ID on, say, Facebook is. So if we didn't keep that ID, then it would create like a new customer list every single day, which isn't very useful. So yeah, so inside the Python, the first time we create the list, we return the list ID, and then from then on, when we're uploading, we specifically upload that ID rather than creating a new list every time. But yeah, I don't know if there's any way around that other than like fetching the system ID back from them.
Yep. And while we're here, I just want to ask another question, which is like, what made you decide to go with a Django app but not a Lambda-like architecture, where it's more in sync with the data warehouse? We can actually only push data, when there's new data that lands in S3, because sometimes the dbt run could fail. And the problem I see here is that using the Django app, the users on the Django end of the pipeline, they don't really know whether the data in S3 is stale or it's actually up to date. Like, unless there's they receive separate notification that there's new file landed in S3 for this purpose. Like, how do you solve this sort of disconnection between the users and the dbt runs on a data engineering side?
Yeah, so hold on. The first part was why we used the Django app. That was mostly because, I don't know, maybe a lot of people in our team Python literate, so like the thought of them like needing to navigate through some like Python script for them would be a blocker to them like being able to use this marketing egress. So the second question on like the notification side, yes, so we have Slack notifications that will tag people if like either the dbt run has failed or if the upload has failed. The second part to that is these lists aren't so important that yes, we upload them every day, but it doesn't really matter if they go out of sync for like 2 or 3 days or even 4 days. That kind of like close timing doesn't really matter to us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Hey, Vincey, I have a question. I actually have 2 questions, if that's okay. The first question I have is, do you ever need to remove users from lists in this process, or is it strictly just puts them on the list and they run them through the course of the campaign?
Right. So let's see. We've never needed to remove them, but we do have like a retention policy for each list. So for example, we have a list for current subscribers and they stay in the list for 30 days since the last time they were uploaded. And that's like a parameter in all the marketing APIs that I've worked with so far. They're a little hard to find though, but it means that and you can like adjust this for different lists as well. But it means that, hey, if I churn from like being a subscriber today, I'm still in the list like in 29 days. And it turns out that we don't really care about that because we don't really want to advertise to people who just left our subscription plan. They're probably not going to come back immediately. But that's how we handle that.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess my second question isn't quite so relevant, but worth asking anyway. I understand that you only want to keep this data around an S3 for like 30 days for, say, GDPR purposes. But have you run into a situation where like you want to know who you thought was on a list 45 days ago for auditing purposes, say because your SQL logic changed or something like that?
Oh gosh. I think so far with all the lists, we can still like put together a query to figure that out. But yes, I guess like beyond 30 days, like, yeah, it's really not the easiest thing. It's not backwards compatible.
Yeah, it's this tension between like, you want to store all the information to audit and debug and things like that, but also like you inherently don't want to store all the information forever. It's like kind of an interesting, like part technical, part like, I don't want to say social problem, but like it's not strictly technical.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Do you have any other hidden slides up your sleeve?
I have one, which isn't that exciting, but this is what our Slack notifications look like. We have ducks and cats. And that's the last hidden slide.
It's amazing. I enjoy Slack bots. I once built a Slack bot called Snackbot. It was fun. Cool. Last chance for anyone to ask any more questions about getting data into your marketing platforms. I think we're all good. Well, Vinci, thank you so much. I certainly learned a ton, and I hope a lot of other people on this call did as well. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen very quickly because I was reminded of something last minute. When my computer stops wearing its fan. That's all right, I'll just read it. So we have another office hours. As I said, we're doing office hours weekly. We have another office hours next week where we have Kristen from Fivetran, who's going to be talking about some of the work she's been doing building packages for a lot of the common popular connectors in Fivetran and some of the design decisions they made. So whether you're using packages or looking to use packages or thinking of building one, that's what we'll be talking about next week. But even sooner than then, we also have our Boston DBT meetup happening on Friday. Janessa, can you remind me of the time of day really quickly? Like Chrome is just frozen.
Yeah, it's from 11 in the morning to noon.
And so that's 11 Eastern time, which is 2 p.m. Pacific time, and I'm really bad at, no, other way around, 8 a.m. Pacific time and 4 p.m. London time and 3 a.m. something like that Sydney time, not even, I don't know, 1 a.m. Sydney time, I can't remember. So we'll record the meetup as well and upload that to YouTube. We've got Chris from Wistia speaking, who are a very early DBT user and talking about some of the accounting models that they've built in DBT, a topic that's very close to my heart, getting accounting principles correctly done in SQL. And Ashley from HubSpot, who were talking about some of their first DBT models they've built at HubSpot and their plan to sort of expand that to some other teams at their company as well. So we're really looking forward to that. Other than that, I'm going to stick around for another 10 minutes or so. It's evening here, so I won't stick around for too long. So if anyone has any other questions they want to ask, now is the time. But if you're ready to head off, have a lovely day, have a lovely evening. Wherever, I don't know which time zone everyone's in, have a great Wednesday or Thursday, depending on where you are. And thank you for joining. And thank you again, Vinci.
Thanks for having me.